Hello, welcome back to Planet 40k. Today we're continuing on with our Dynasty Tactic videos and we're going to be focusing on the Nephrekh Dynasty. So before we do, random shout out of today is going to Malignus, the Undying King, for his comment he put on for the Zerakin Dynasty we did just recently. So the Nephrekh Dynasty, this is a rich dynasty, which hence the gold colour scheme. It's got the following ability. So it's got translocation beams. So models with this code have a 6+ invulnerable save. Also, each time a unit with the code advances, it can translocate. If it does, do not make an advance roll for it. Instead, they're going to add 6 inches to their move characteristics. However, the models then cannot shoot. Each time a unit in this code falls back or translocates, until the end of the phase, models in the units can move across terrain and through other models as if they were not there. Then finally, when the protocol of sudden storm becomes active for your army, all units with this code can use both directives on the command protocol. So having an army-wide 6+ invuln save is quite magic for your warriors and immortals and scarabs. Even other multi-wound models such as tombblades and destroyers will benefit. This code, however, is a bit of a mixed bag. It's not really built in a certain direction, such as being a melee-based force or a ranged force. So the main thing this code does have to offer is speed. Your advanced roll is always a 6-inch and goes through anything using the translocation technology they have. This is great for all sorts of reasons. Firstly, you just get into objectives a lot quicker, which is huge in 9th edition, especially for those primary objectives. Secondly, you can literally ghost through screens as if they were not there. And thirdly, you can never be trapped in combat, as you can ghost out of combat when falling back. So this is built for Canoptic Wraiths because they can fall back and then charge because they've got an ability to do so. Just remember though that they lose the ability to shoot if you do use the auto 6-inch advance rule. It is however only optional. So the protocol of sudden storm, which is linked to the dynasty here, which is directive 1, you can add 1 to the moves characteristic of models in the unit, and directive 2, if the unit's performing an action, it can still make attacks with ranged weapons without the action failing. So a bit so-so this protocol, probably best served early game to get some extra movement in, and you can also be scoring your secondaries without failing those actions. So the dynasty faces stiff competition for the custom dynasty codes. So Unyielding gives you a 6+ invuln save, and you can pair this with either Relentlessly Expansionist for the pre-game movement, or maybe the Ancient Stir, which adds some movement to Canoptic units only if you're going in that direction, or just simply add something else entirely to go with your Unyielding. So let's get into the unique options that units in this code can take, starting off with the Warlord Traits. So the Nephrekh Warlord Trait is Skin of Living Gold, so a shiny gold armor, so putting enemy units off doing their attacks slightly. It's not too bad of a trait, but most Necron HQs in the melee aren't that great anyway compared to other factions, and they aren't likely to get shot at range due to the Lookout Sir ability. So the relic for this dynasty is Solar Staff. So models that are equipped with a Staff of Light only, the relic replaces the Staff of Light and has the following profile. So for the shooting attack, it's 24-inch range, assault 6, strength 5, -2 AP and 1 damage. And it's got the same strength, AP and damage with the melee attack. Now both of these attacks come with the following ability. So each time an attack is made with this weapon against an infantry unit, if a hit is scored, then until the end of the turn, the unit is blinded. Blinded units cannot fire Overwatch or set to defend. So Lords and Overlord models can take the Staff of Light and upgrade to a Solar Staff. Now the Staff of Light was only 18-inch range and obviously doesn't blind units. Although blinding units is very situational, maybe could be used against Flamestorm Gauntlets or Burner Boys perhaps. At least it's got a better range now of 24-inch range, so you don't need to get too close to make use of that blinding ability. Personally, I wouldn't take it when there's much better options in the Codex. If you really wanted to upgrade your Staff of Light, get a Voltaic Staff. Now the Dynasty Stratagem is Translocation Crypt. It's one command point used before the game begins when you're declaring your reserves and transports. You can select one Nephrekh unit that isn't a vehicle or a monster, and the unit gains the dimensional translocation ability, which is Deep Strike. So this is going to see some play, given units Deep Strike can be amazing, and as this isn't used in a single phase, it can be used multiple times as long as no more than 50% of your army is in reserves. So this is going to be fantastic on units such as Wraiths, Corvette Destroyers, Lichguard, anything that usually has attacks to get into combat, or the ones that literally have no option but to footslog. Also fantastic for warriors holding their Reapers, so you don't need to use a Veil of Darkness relic, you don't need a Night Scythe, and you don't need a character. So when you're building a Nephrekh Dynasty, you need to think about what units you're going to bring, so let's go through some of the units available. So we've got to start with those Canoptic Wraiths. Now in the old edition, they had a stratagem to advance and charge, which made the Nephrekh Dynasty work wonders for Canoptic Wraiths. However, with 9th edition they don't have this stratagem anymore. Advancing means they can't shoot and of course they can't charge. And without objectives secured, it kind of feels a bit worthless now when you compare it to some of the custom codes. Relentlessly Expansionists holds much more value for the Wraiths, moving 6-inch pre-game, than having Eternal Conquerors for the objective secured. Now Wraiths already carry an invuln, so that 6+ army wide invuln doesn't really help them. So Wraiths have gone from being one of the best options for the Dynasty in 8th edition to being a kind of mediocre option now. Now they are pretty quick at 12-inch movement, so advancing them gives you 18 inches. It's still something, but you want to take ground and go fast. And as mentioned, the ability to fall out of combat and recharge is still pretty good. They already have the ability to ghost through models, so they don't actually need to advance to do this. So screens are not an issue for them. Move them 12 inches and be able to charge the units that are behind the screen is probably a better method than actually advancing. Ideal targets for this are tanks, units that fire extremely well but don't do anything in melee, especially if they've got the blast keyword, as now they can't even shoot into combat, which will give them no option but to fall back. So what are the units that actually do work well with the code then? So warriors, as always, giving them a 6+ inman save alongside their reanimation roll is pretty good. Yes, unyielding does this as well if you go custom. This is going to be a common theme in this video, unfortunately. Warriors could use the advantage of taking the translocation stratagem with their strength 5 reapers that fire 2 shots at 12-inch range for -2 AP. So if you're looking for a full 20-man warrior blob that's pumping 40 shots out, now the disadvantage of this is you can't buff them pre-deep strike with the My Will Be Done ability. Unfortunately, we're not Marines and we don't have those chaplain stratagems to dish out litanies in any phase, so if you go Necron warriors with the deep strike, they're going to go in the cold. They still should be deleting units though. With warriors, I think the Veil of Darkness relic is actually better, as you get the command phase to buff them and you don't have to wait till turn 2 to use it. Just bear in mind, a warrior unit's footprint is pretty large, so it can be screened off quite easily. The more melee based options would probably see better use from the stratagem. So you've got Scorpet Destroyers, easily the best melee option. We've got points for points, and usually they have to foot slog or use strategic reserves. With Dimensional Translocation, they've got a shot of getting into combat without being picked off. However, if that charge does fail, which will be a 9-inch charge, then maybe they're going to get picked off anyway, so you need to try enter into terrain where possible just for that 2+ armor save. Then they're going to enjoy that 6+ inman save. Now 6+ isn't an eye-opening save, and usually against those elite units they will have a high damage weaponry targeting them, and they only really need one of them to go through to ping off a destroyer off the table. The Lich Guard are probably a better option here, as they've only got 2 wounds apiece, so they aren't likely to be targeted by high damage weapons such as a las cannon for example, and they also come in max units of 10, so they can reanimate much better as well. So they're going to be taking small arms fire. Now if they fail a charge from deep strike, invuns will see more use because you're going to have a lot more weaker shots to block rather than a few big shots. Lich Guard models usually need a Night Scythe again or a Veil of Darkness relic. They're also not going to be using the command phase when they use the stratagem as mentioned as well, so they have to hit on 3s. No Chronomancer buffs to come into play for the rerolls to their charge roll. Chronomancers like Wraiths are another unit that will suffer within this dynasty. Now they grant a 5+ inman save to a unit, but when you've got an army-wide 6+ save, yes, a 5+ save is obviously better, but it's less needed than before. And if you're using the stratagem, then you're missing out on that command phase to buff the unit in the first place. Canoptic Scarabs work pretty nicely as you compare them with the Spiders. Both units will make use of the inman saves. Scarabs in particular, whether they're screening units off or scoring your points, will make use of that 6+ auto advance roll, and they're going to have just tons of wounds to get through. A lot of opponents underestimate the value of Canoptic Scarabs and tend to not throw the big guns into them, thinking they're just a small annoyance. So usually they only get targeted by small arms, that's if they're even seen, as they hide pretty well within terrain. So get yourself a golden sand battle mat, blend them in, and they'll never be seen again. Tomb Blade's another option here to add some speed to speed, but now they can't shoot, which is a bit of a bummer. But at least you probably won't need to take the Shadow Loom upgrades, as you've got some sort of invan now, so instead of spending 5 points per model on a Shadow Loom, you can instead invest on the shield veins, or just an extra model in the unit perhaps. An option you don't see many players using at the moment is the flayed ones. Now 20 flayed ones with invan saves could be a thing. They already have deep strike, so you're going to save a command point on that. They don't shoot, so if they finish a unit off and there's no nearby targets, then they can just make use of that translocation beam to be advancing up to their next targets. So really this dynasty aids foot soldiers without invan saves. Most of our vehicles have quantum shielding, so they've got their own invan anyway inbuilt, which is actually better than the Nephrekh code invan save. And a lot of vehicles won't be advancing, and vehicles tend to be shooty based, like your Doomsday Arcs or your Canoptic Doomstalkers. I know that's a monster, but neither of those units just mentioned are going to be moving, so you're kind of really limited on what units actually benefit from the code itself. So when it comes to making a list, you need command protocols, as you don't have much else going on with the dynasty to be honest, so a noble needs to be in. Your noble selection kind of just depends on how you're going to get your other units into range. So if you're sticking to the trusty Veil of Darkness relic, then an Overlord on foot works just fine, but if you are using the stratagem to get warriors in close, then maybe a command barge, as he's got the speed to meet your guys there by turn 2, and hopefully by turn 3 you can start buffing the unit with Mine Will Be Done. Not ideal if I'm honest, 2 out of 5 of those turns have already gone past at that point. So it kind of depends on your playstyle at this point and whether you're going to go melee based or shooty based or a bit of both. If you're going melee based, then you might want to consider the Nephrekh Dynasty, which is a lot stronger at present, and you get into combat a little easier with the +1 to the charge roll and the extra AP in melee. So the options there of course are Wraiths, Scorpet Destroyers, Ophidian Destroyers, Flayed Ones, Lich Guard, all the usual suspects there. If you go more shooty, you do have the Nephrekh Dynasty, which could be a bit more suitable to you, or even the Saltec Dynasty if you're very core heavy, especially with rapid fire weaponry. Now for the Nephrekh Dynasty, you've got options of the Warriors, you've got Immortals, Tomb Blades. Your big heavies ain't going to really benefit if you want them using the extra firepower. Now Locust Destroyers are probably better suited to this because they're going to gain an invuln save, and if they're firing from cover, that's a 2+6+. You could opt to take a Doom Scythe. Now they don't actually have quantum shielding, so this could be a better option over say fielding a Doomsday Arc. So going somewhere in between for this dynasty is a better way of making a list in my opinion. A bit of melee, a bit of range. The code doesn't really benefit either approach, so just taking advantage of your code by just taking more models on the table, which means you're going to get more invuln saves. Not only that, more units means you're stealing more points, making use of the advanced beam. Rather than going for the top 3 units in the video, which we normally do, I'm instead going to do units that don't quite synergize well with this dynasty. So top 3 doesn't really feel relevant, because you can kind of use anything. It's a bit of a mixed bag. So units that don't sync well. This doesn't mean don't select them, by the way. I'm just meaning they don't synergize as well as others. So as mentioned, Doomsday Arcs and Canoptic Doomstalkers both already have an invuln save built in, and both should never really be moving, so neither of these are going to use the faction ability. In fact, anything with quantum shielding won't need the invuln save. Command barges, annihilation barges, ghost arcs, that sort of thing. They don't need the invuln save. Lich Guard with the dispersion shields is less needed, so if you do go with your Lich Guard, get them carrying war scythes because you've got a 6+ invuln save anyway. You may as well make use of it. Wraiths used to be amazing, but this edition they're kind of redundant in terms of synergizing with the actual code abilities. They've already got the Ghost Through Models ability and they carry an invuln anyway. So yeah, take them in your list, but just be aware the synergy isn't as good as it used to be. So the dynasty feels like it's fallen from grace here. Custom codes have made this dynasty a little bit pointless in a way. It's actually gone a bit backwards. They allow you to move quick, but they take away the ability to shoot, and obviously you can't charge if you advance anyway. But on the other hand, they give you an alternative method of getting in with the stratagem that actually makes more sense, as you can at least charge after using it. But then it's at 9 inches and it goes from turn 2 onwards. Now both methods tie a hand behind your back when using them, so it points you into the direction of using a Veil of Darkness relic or a Night Scythe, and to be honest, any dynasty can use those. Virtually everything this dynasty has to offer can be found in other parts of the Codex and doing it much better. It's probably not what Nephrekh players want to hear, but you're better off going custom. You can fine tune your codes to get your buffs that actually suit your playstyle and the models you enjoy fielding, rather than having a dynasty code that kind of makes your units less efficient for the points. Necrons are already falling down the ladder with each book release. The Codex creep is a thing. Just look at Drukhari right now, unstoppable. So as a Necron player, we need to put our best out just to play competitively. Marines can almost put out anything and do just fine, and Drukhari, well, we all know about those guys. So that kind of wraps up the Nephrekh Dynasty code, guys. Make sure you subscribe for more Necron content, and like the video if you found it somewhat useful, and remember to get in the comments for a chance of a random shout out each and every video. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.